Hey everyone, we're behind the scenes here at the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We're here with permission from the staff and we have some really interesting artifacts to show you. And this isn't just one video. We want to encourage you to check out the other video of us walking through the galleries. We have other artifacts that we're going to break out for us. So this will be a small series of videos and we encourage you to come here to Harrisburg. We're not far from Gettysburg. If you ever make that trek to Gettysburg, come north up to the state capitol here in Pennsylvania. Check out our friends here at the National Civil War Museum. But to start off with, we've asked them to pull out some interesting artifacts for us. And this is a table full of different papers from the American Civil War era. We have some photographs, we have a manual, and we're going to go through a few items for you. To start off with, for you Irish Brigade fans, I think that this is a really beautiful piece. And you can see on the letterhead here, it says Headquarters, Irish Brigade, 596 Broadway, New York. And this is Thomas Francis Marr, the acting Brigadier General of the famed Irish Brigade. This is a letter that is written to a commissary named Chester Arthur, future President of the United States, asking for a number of items. You can see his handwriting's not the best. It's not the worst handwriting I've seen from the American Civil War. And we're going to see a little bit more handwriting here. So this is a beautifully laid out piece of paper. And also, for those of you who don't think they have lines on paper during the Civil War, in fact they do. And this one has the blue lines that you might have seen when you were growing up in your college textbooks, or your notebooks, I should say. So this is a really neat piece here. And if you flip it over, it even goes on to the back, and you can see Thomas Francis Marr's beautiful signature here. And you can see it also comes off as Colonel Marr, October 21st, 1861. So we have two different ranks here for the leader of the famed Irish Brigade. Really cool piece. For you George Custer fans out there, I know Dan Davis right now is pumping his fist somewhere off camera. This is actually a piece that is written to his men on April 9th, 1865. This is from Appomattox Courthouse, and this is his farewell address to the 3rd Division of the Cav of the Army of the Potomac. He's the commander of that 3rd Division, and this is telling his soldiers of the 3rd Division with profound gratitude toward the God of battle, by whose blessing our reading this upside down, enemies have been humbled and our arms rendered triumphant. And he keeps going on and on, telling you about his great love that he has for his division. And of course, on the back, it too is signed by General Custer. You can see with the compliments of George Armstrong Custer. So this is one of those pieces that they have here. Beautiful condition, both of these pieces we've shown you so far. For our Western fans out there, this is the Daily Citizen out in Vicksburg, Mississippi. It is dated July 2nd, 1863. This is right towards the end of that 47-day siege at Vicksburg, and this is telling us the news that would have taken place here on the Confederate side. And then towards the end of this piece, the Union comes in and they will take over the printing press and tell us their side of the siege. And I think there's something on here that talks about the Confederates no longer having to eat kittens, because this is how the siege has been going for them. Everything is kind of anything that they can eat can be eaten in that city. So it's a pretty grim sight. But if you flip it over, and it says on here, it's written on there to flip this over, it shows you some of the wallpaper that it was printed on, and then you can see the Parker's Express Company stamp, boom, Vicksburg, Mississippi, right on top of that. So that's a pretty neat piece here that they have in the collection.
So not only are they short on food, they're short on paper, they're short on everything, to the point where they're forced to print their newspaper on what was on their walls.
Yeah, and they're very short on patience with John Pemberton, who's a Pennsylvanian in charge of Southern troops. So it's a pretty grim place. Before I bring Garry on to show you a few items, I want to point out a piece of the Second Manassas campaign. This is from August 27th of 1862, 4 p.m. This is to Major General George McClellan in Alexandria, Virginia. He's just returned from the Peninsula Campaign, his failed Peninsula Campaign. And it simply says, "What news from the Army? Abraham Lincoln." So this is Lincoln asking what is going on at the outset of the just a few days here before the Second Battle of Manassas takes place. So this is in the midst of that Second Manassas campaign. We have the miscreant John Pope, according to Robert E. Lee, about to make the engagement take place there at Manassas or Bull Run. And it's not going to go well for him. And of course, George McClellan comes back into the command of the Army of the Potomac. After that, goes to the Battle of Antietam and then eventually loses his command on November 7th of 1862. Over here, we have a couple pieces of photography and a lithograph here. Gary, what do we have over here?
Yeah, well, first I just want to say that you never get over the idea of being in the presence of Abraham Lincoln's signature, a piece of paper that, went under his eye and that he touched, and this never ceases to be special. Whenever you get to be in the presence of that. I'll say here that you're seeing a Currier and Ives drawing. These are known for their romantic and dramatic portrayal of battles, and in this case it shows something we all now know well. Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, the young colonel in charge of his men storming the parapet of Fort Wagner in July of 1863. Now, he was already notable for taking command of this colored regiment early in the war, young, dashing colonel from a wealthy family, so that he has several of these cartes de visite actually made. He was a popular figure. He could have no idea that there would be a movie in which he would be a main character, and how his legacy, and I'm sure he's proud of the legacy of his men, the way that they have lived on. Now, when you take this Currier and Ives print and you look at it, it's actually related to this photo here, taken in the summer of 1863. It's a National Guard unit, and it's taken almost right across the river from where we stand. These are men of a Pennsylvania National Guard unit, and their commander is in the center. That's James Ives of Currier and Ives. So I appreciate the way that the curator here, Brett Kelly, put these out next to each other, because you've got sort of a full circle. In fact, Battery Wagner that is being depicted in the lithograph is actually an event that is taking place around when this photo is being taken during the Gettysburg campaign. This is one of, by the way, many. Most photographers stayed in their studios. 99% of them stayed in their studios. It was very difficult to take your camera away from it and develop photos. So sometimes these local photographers had an opportunity, seized the opportunity, and then would go back to their more profitable portraiture trade. So sometimes it's hard to know even who took a photo, including this one. Now, I think Kris is going to interject with a very interesting piece here before we get back to some others.
Yeah, so this is really interesting piece. It's the office of the Annapolis Telegraph Company, and this is from one officer to another. This is to Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who is fighting outside of Petersburg in 1864 when he's grievously wounded down there at a place he dubs Fort Hell, or the soldiers dubbed Fort Hell. And this is from his commanding general, Ulysses S. Grant. And this one is to the Colonel Joshua L. Chamberlain, 20th Maine Volunteer Infantry, Special Orders number 39. And this is making him for meritorious and efficient services on the field of battle, and especially for gallant conduct on leading his brigade against the enemy at Petersburg on the 18th of June, in which he was dangerously wounded. Hereby is pursuant to the authority of the Secretary of War, appointed Brigadier General of Volunteers to the rank as such from the 18th day of June, 1864, subject to the approval of the President. Our favorite piece of this, as he is wounded through the hip pretty grievously, he receives this telegraph, which he then has to pay $5 to receive, because at the bottom of it, it says collect $5. Brett, the curator here, also noted that this is pretty crumpled. It's almost like someone received it and was going to throw it away, but then realized this is probably something that they should keep. So for you Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain fans, this is the telegraph that came to him, informing him while he's in the hospital that he is now a brigadier general. Over here we have another battle-related item, as well as a post-Gettysburg-related item that Gary's going to talk about.
I'm actually going to start with the post item. Thank you, Kris. This is something written by somebody you know, the hero of Gettysburg, John Burns, and here he is writing to one of his part of his adulating public. He is known as the hero of Gettysburg. He picked up his old musket and engaged with the enemy, got terribly wounded and left on the field, captured by the Confederates, let go to become the hero of Gettysburg, made the cover of Harper's Weekly, for which there is no equivalent today. And Abraham Lincoln even heard of him down in Washington, wanted to meet him, and did when he came to deliver the Gettysburg Address. So this guy lives the last several years of his life as a hero, with scores of pictures being taken of him. His autograph was most in demand, and people were writing to him. This is the back end of being famous, like Robert Gould Shaw, who became more famous in death. John Burns actually got to experience this in life, and this is him writing back in a very humble manner to one of the people that said, you must have felt the patriotic urge and everything like that. And he was really taking an end and saying, no, I just did what my duty was. I just helped all the defenders of the Republic. So it's a very interesting read into somebody who you might see as seizing the moment to grab as much fame as he could, but at least on paper it doesn't really play out that way. Now, this here is a much more somber artifact. It's a U.S. tactical manual. This is not necessarily all that uncommon during the Civil War, especially for these soldiers turned, lieutenants, majors, colonels, and even generals. They better understand some of the tactics, and it says U.S. infantry tactics. Now, this one is special not because of what book it is, but because it was in the pocket of one Henry Fuller of the 64th New York, and in the Battle of Gettysburg, after charging through the wheat field and up toward a hill above it, he was struck in the breast, and it hit him directly in the location where this tactical manual is. And it is hard to see a more tangible sort of object that is testament to somebody's wounding and ultimately their death. His death site is actually marked on the Gettysburg battlefield. His story is pretty well known in terms of others trying to go to his aid. One was killed, one was wounded. And here, in the collections of the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg, we're lucky to have something that really speaks to this terrible moment as he lay, and you can go back to that spot and imagine what it was like for him if you care to. And this tactical manual, seeing it even on video somehow, just really speaks to what his last moments would have been like. Kris?
Yeah, it's very moving for me because my ancestor was wounded just about the same time, 200 yards away from him, in almost the same exact area with, in the same general vicinity in the chest. So it's a beautiful piece, and we actually have another video on our website if you'd like to check that out, where Wayne Motts and Garry go out in the field with it. But to move through this, I'm going to move Captain Fuller's item here. We'll start with this and end down here. This is an extraordinarily rare piece, and this is the play Billard for Our American Cousins, which is the play that President Abraham Lincoln is watching the night that he is killed. So it says Ford's Theater, 10th Street above E, and this will give you the run of the evening, Friday evening, April 14th, 1865, Good Friday, a benefit, and the last night of Miss Laura Keene, who was the star of Our American Cousins, which was a very popular play at the time. And this one talks about Tom Taylor's celebrated eccentric comedy. And as you move your way down here, it gives you everyone who was part of the play. The printing press obviously had a problem because the E at the end of her name was kind of cut off. John's name, end of his name was cut off, same with Harry Hawks. So you can see there's a little problem here with the printing press, but as you move your way down a little bit farther, you can see the next night there will be for the benefit of Janine Gourlay, and then if you keep moving down a little bit farther, you can see what tickets actually cost. For the orchestra, it was $1. For the dress circle, it was 75 cents. For the family circle, 25 cents. And for a private box, like the president would have been sitting in, it was either $6 or $10. And of course, the manager is J.B. Ford, Ford's Theater business manager.
And I'm sure when Taylor, I believe, wrote or produced this comedy, the idea of this line, "You sockdologizing old man trap," that this would be presumably the last words that the 16th president overheard, could not have crossed his mind. And now people today know that line because it was the timed moment where John Wilkes Booth chose to shoot the president during a laughter that always came after it.
Yeah, this is a piece that's really remarkable. And then moving down, another piece that is here, this is another written out telegraph here. This is dated at 12:40 in the morning, April 15th, 1865. Lincoln is shot around 10:30 in the evening on April 14th. So on the 15th, this is saying by the telegram from Washington, D.C., April 14th, 1865, to General Marcina R. Patrick. He's the Provost Marshal of the Army of the Potomac. He's our military police. And the Commanding General, George Gordon Meade, and the Corps Commanders. This is for the Army of the Potomac's Corps Commanders. The President was assassinated at Ford's Theater last at 10:30 tonight and cannot live. The wound is a pistol shot through the head. And Secretary Seward and his son Frederick were also assassinated at their residence and are in dangerous condition. General Grant has been telegraphed at Philadelphia and returned to Washington at once. And this is from Thomas Eckert. He's a major and the Assistant Adjutant General of the 1st Division of the 6th Army Corps. This is dated April 15th, 1865. And this was telling the Army of the Potomac, the commanders down there, that Lincoln has been assassinated. We know he's not dead yet. He doesn't die until 7:22 the next morning. But at this point, they know that it is that grievous that Lincoln only has a matter of hours to live. So this is an amazing artifact here, and I've used that word a lot, I know.
And I just wanted to say real quick that, this too at the time, you see some of the misinformation. They don't know exactly what has happened to Secretary Seward and everything like that, but also that when this news travels to the Army of the Potomac elsewhere, when Joseph Johnston hears about it, remember his army hasn't surrendered yet, he is heard to say, this is the greatest possible calamity to the South. People are starting to understand that it's not going to be an easy post-war period as a result of this event, almost immediately.
Yeah, we're transitioning from a war into peacetime and, of course, that Reconstruction period. So it's a great point, Gary. And finally, a few weeks later, this card was issued to David Hunter, who is a Union general. He's known as Black David Hunter. And this is from May, looks like 2nd, 1865. It's to admit a person and his friends at the behest of General Hunter into the inquiry and the trial of the Lincoln assassins. So this would have been a card that you would have been issued to go into the Lincoln assassination room, so where the trial is taking place. So this is a collection that walks you from 1861 up to Appomattox and beyond here with the Lincoln assassination. And this is just one small piece of the collection here at the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg. So we encourage you to head out here, check out their website, and check out the other videos we're posting here on YouTube. So on behalf of the American Battlefield Trust, Gary, Andy behind the camera, Brett, who's back there too, the curator, making sure that Gary's not running around with these pictures. We want to really thank them for having us, and thank you for watching and for supporting battlefield education and preservation.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. To stay up to date on all the latest and coolest videos, please subscribe to the Trust's YouTube channel. Preserve, educate, inspire.